Welcome to the Autism Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Janeen Herskovitz, and it's my goal to help you create a more peaceful home while living with autistic and neurodivergent loved ones. Each episode, we focus on a different room in the house and help you create a peace plan for your home. So let's get started. Welcome, friends, to the Autism Blueprint Podcast. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to have Cindy Moratic, a highly experienced ABA therapist with over 25 years in the field. So many people have a lot of misconceptions about applied behavioral analysis. Sometimes it's viewed as a one-size-fits-all approach that focuses solely on compliance. But Cindy is here with me today to challenge those notions and share her insights on how ABA can be a powerful tool for enhancing the quality of life for individuals with autism. We'll dive into her journey from special education teacher to opening her own ABA company. We'll discuss the importance of presuming competence and explore how effective communication and emotional regulation play a crucial role in therapy. Plus, we'll tackle common myths about ABA and highlight the significance of supporting individuals beyond their early years. So whether you're a parent, an educator, or simply just curious about autism and ABA, this conversation is packed with valuable information and perspectives. So let's get started. Cindy Moratic, welcome to the Autism Blueprint Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be on.
Great. It's my pleasure to have you on. So I know that my audience is probably wondering, what the heck does Janeen have an ABA therapist on for? Because I speak so often about presuming competence and things like that. People automatically assume that I'm not a proponent of ABA. But here's the bottom line that I always tell them. I am a proponent of any therapy that helps your child that is ethical and that is done by a practitioner who is well trained. And I can tell you guys, I've gotten to know Cindy a little bit over the last couple months, and she's a real deal, y'all. So we're going to talk today about some of the misconceptions about ABA and also about just kind of how it works. So Cindy, welcome to the show. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today in your career.
Sure. So I started off as a special education teacher, and I taught in a self-contained classroom for a cooperative in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. And a cooperative basically is other local school districts pay into a special education cooperative if they're unable to service their student in their home school. Instead of sending to a therapeutic environment, this is considered a step in the least restrictive continuum in Illinois. So I was in a classroom with a full-time speech path. We co-taught, and most of the kids were non-vocal and had behavior plans, but we provided education, hoping that they wouldn't have to go to a therapeutic environment. After I taught there for 5 years, I taught in a therapeutic environment in a hospital setting. Rush Hospital in Chicago has a school for children with psychiatric and emotional disorders. And I was one of the teachers in their classroom. And it was really cool experience because we got to work with psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers and mental health technicians. So it was just a different type of teaching experience, different perspective, a lot of those children also had autism, but would be considered like higher functioning, just had more different repertoires than the students I taught in the co-op setting. And after that job, I was hired by a school district on the north side of Chicago. And my job there was to bring kids back from their therapeutic setting or their co-op setting to educate them in their home district. And that was also just a different experience because I was working closely with administrators and school psychologists and the behavior specialists to create an environment where children could succeed in their home school. So somewhere along all these lines, and I had a baby and got married and, life kind of happened. But I got my BCABA, and I also became an expert witness for an educational attorney. And I would, it was different. And I was hired to observe students in whatever educational setting they were, write a report, and then I would testify either at mediation or due process cases based on my recommendations and observations and analyzing the data. So when that job ended and my kids went to school full time, I decided I was going to go back into the school district, and I was a behavior specialist for the entire district. So I had to write behavior plans for children that required them, had to coach teachers a bit on different strategies for kids who were more highly impacted with autism or developmental disabilities. And what really led me to opening up my ABA company was I would be going to IEP meetings with other behavior analysts that work for larger ABA companies that, you know, we would call like the McDonald's of ABA, you know, one on every corner in Chicago. And I would be thinking, we're not even looking at the same child anymore. Like there is nothing that's specific that is going to improve the quality of this child's life that you're supposed to be treating. So, you know, there's an 8-year-old who's non-vocal and not toilet trained, and, you know, we're worried about filling in a graph to make it look pretty instead of teaching them quality of life skills that will improve the life of the family, not just the student we're discussing, but will it make their world bigger instead of making their world smaller. So going to all of these IEP meetings with other people in my field, I'm like, I am going to open up a company that strictly focuses on skills that will improve quality of life and make the world bigger of the families we serve.
Oh gosh, I love that. That's just lovely. And I love how you have experience in the classroom setting, in the hospital setting, in the private therapy setting. You know, you have all of these experiences. How do you think those experiences have informed the work that you're doing now?
You know, it taught me to think differently and to ask appropriate questions to families, right? Because it's my belief families are really the expert on their child, right? Like I may have more of the background on how to get to where they want to be, right? Or where they want their child to be. Like that's what I'm trained in. And I'm also trained, but working with those other disciplines have also taught me how to ask important questions to make sure we're getting to what the family is really looking for, right? So, you know, a family may come to me and say, I just want to be able to take my child to Target and have him not run out of line. That's the only thing that's important to me right now, because I have to go to Target and, you know, he has to learn to wait in line. Or, you know, I need to be able to shop. And what we really need, though, is he needs to be able to follow directions and wait next to you for a certain amount of time. It's not going to Target, it's the skill that's missing. So it's really informed me to ask more thoughtful questions so we're able to make and design interventions and plans in an informative way that will truly make a difference.
I love that, because what you're doing is you're taking an issue that a parent has and you're pulling back and seeing that bigger picture.
Yes.
And
It's like an onion, right? We need to peel
yeah.
the onion back to kind of get to like what they really need. And sometimes I'm not the one who can do it, right? And I'm okay saying that, like, oh, you need to go to the OT so he can tolerate, you know, noises a little bit more. Or, you know, you need to go to the speech path because they'll have a better device for him to be able to say, I can't wait, or, you know, I need more time. So I don't have all the answers, but I'll know who to send you to get the right answers. But I can help you be more specific about what you really may want for your child or young adult.
That's lovely. Tell me, you know, for those who aren't familiar with, I know we throw acronyms and terms around all the time. For those who aren't familiar with ABA, explain to our listeners what it is and how it works.
So ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And I like to tell parents really, because it can be controversial, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there about ABA or misconceptions about ABA. So what I like to tell parents is it's just really great teaching practices. So ABA is just the science of teaching behaviors and learning. So what we do in ABA is we provide an assessment. And I know so many parents are like, gosh, another assessment, another test. But the assessment is really to identify skills that we need to teach more of, or maybe not reinforce as much. So your child or young adult will be able to have more access to the community and a better quality of life. And a lot of those skills can be communication, waiting, transitioning, giving up preferred items. In ABA, when we say the word behavior, it's not good or bad. We're not talking about what is good behavior, what is bad behavior. We're just talking about anything you do, whether it's talking or setting the table. Behavior is just something you're demonstrating. So we're really just looking at behaviors and skills that we need to make sure our learners with developmental disabilities or autism can demonstrate and complete with fluency across a variety of people in different settings as independent as possible.
I love that. So, I mean, it sounds like you're very skill focused and goal oriented.
Yes.
Yes. Which
yes,
I think
because,
is important.
If most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time behaviors occur, or behaviors that parents or teachers or community members wouldn't want their child to demonstrate occur because they're missing a skill. And using that behavior has just become very efficient, and it gets them access to kind of what they want or what they want to get out of, right? So we just need to teach the appropriate skills to have them use that more instead of their behavior.
I love that you worded it that way, because I think one of the big misconceptions is, okay, if my child is emotionally dysregulated, and I hear this from therapists like myself a lot, I'm not going to train them, quote unquote, to not be, but I need to kind of get to the bottom of how do we provide that emotional regulation and at the same time help them behave, appropriately in certain situations. It's a tough balance.
It is a tough balance. And when we have clients that are emotionally dysregulated, or learners that are emotionally dysregulated, we have it often. Like, it occurs multiple times throughout the day at my centers. We're compassionate and we acknowledge that they're emotionally dysregulated. We're not ignoring the emotional dysregulation. We're just teaching skills so they don't become emotionally dysregulated, right? That's our job. Like, recognizing the emotional dysregulation, comforting them, training our therapists how to show compassion during those times. But also at the same time, we don't want it to happen again. So are we going to teach the skill in that moment? No, that's not the appropriate time to teach it. But we are going to teach it throughout the day in a time where they are emotionally regulated.
So you're seeing that emotional dysregulation as a sign to you that, it's not the moment to teach a skill right now.
Correct.
Tell me why.
Well, none of us learn when we're emotionally dysregulated, right? Like, if we're having an argument with our spouse and they're telling us to calm down or listen, we are not calming down and listening, right? It's usually a trigger to keep going.
Yes.
So recognizing it's not the time or place, that they're not ready to learn, they're not accessible to learn because they're emotionally dysregulated, right? So I just go back to my own children who are, quote, neurotypical. If my 15-year-old teenager is not happy because she can't go to Starbucks, and, she's upstairs telling me all the reasons why she should go, now it's not my time to reason with her why no is my answer, right? We'll talk about this later when she's more accessible to hear what I'm saying. And also, one of my supervisors have told me, you're not going to rationalize somebody out of a behavior they didn't rationalize themselves into, right? Oh, yeah. So, a lot of times the strong emotional reactions, an individual with a developmental disability may not understand the word rational or know what that means, but it's not something that they understand how they got themselves into that situation. So we're not going to talk them out of it. We're just going to teach them a way to get access to what they want in a more productive way.
I love that. I really do. And I like that you were talking about AAC devices and understanding that our kids can communicate in different ways. How do you
Yes.
incorporate different ways of communicating into an ABA session?
Um, so I own a multidisciplinary practice, which means I have a speech path on staff and an occupational therapist on staff. So usually our speech path will find their appropriate method of speaking, meaning is it efficient? Is it something they can carry with them? Is it something they use fluently across multiple settings? So that may look like picture cards, that may be sign, that may be AAC, that might be vocal. And sometimes if they're vocal, when they're highly escalated, vocal may not be their most efficient way of communicating. We may need to go back to pictures if they're emotionally dysregulated. So for us, it's usually not just one method of speaking, it's usually multiple. I tell everybody we communicate neurotypically in multiple ways, right? We're texting, we're emailing, we're calling, we're having Google Meets, right? So there's
Yeah.
so many different ways for us to communicate. It would not be fair to say, to our individuals who may be non-vocal or have limited vocal, this is the only one way you're going to communicate, and it needs to go across everybody, because that's not realistic either.
Yes, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, so much has changed. I know I've shared with my audience before details about my son who's now 27, and back in the day when he was doing ABA therapy, there were things that would happen where I would just incredulously look at the therapist like, "Really?" One story that I tell, and I just want you to I just want to tell it to you to kind of be like, what do you think of this?" Um he was working with a therapist who was teaching him how to play with toys because he didn't play with toys. Well, he did play with toys, just not in the neurotypical way.
Yeah,
So he actually picked up a frog and was making it fly in the air, which I was like ecstatic that he even picked up a toy.
yeah.
The therapist told him, no, frogs don't fly, and was told that the way he was playing with the frog was incorrect. So we left and never came back.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that wouldn't be a great sign
Yeah,
because, first of all, like, there's so many other skills. I always think, like, what other skills was she teaching that he finally did that? Not only play, maybe he was imitating something and his imitation skills weren't great. And that's great. Now he's like imitating a frog flying or doing something with an object that, you're trying to master. And
sure.
also, like, I don't know many neurotypical 3 or 4 year olds that play in ways that's the way the object's meant to be used for, right? They're they have imaginative play and they're just talking nonstop, and there are schemes in their head that I didn't teach my children how to do that. They
Right.
learned it somewhere, right? And it's great that they're expressing themselves in that way. And guess what? In some fairy tales, frogs do fly. So, like, that's the other thing. Actually, no, read a fairy tale book. Some frogs do fly.
Right.
And it reminds me a lot of this is a reference to a 90s movie.
Uh-huh.
But Billy Madison, the movie Billy Madison, when he had to go back to kindergarten and he colored the duck blue instead of yellow, and he looks at the
Yes.
teacher and goes, I just wanted to color a blue duck because I like the color blue. And the kindergarten teacher was like, yes, that's lovely. Like, that's the response it should have been, right? Like,
Right.
yes, that's lovely. The frog is flying. Frogs can jump. Some frogs fly. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would
And
not have liked that.
now this was a good 24 years ago, right? So what our understanding, and again, I'm not making an excuse, but this is probably the reason our understanding of autism and people that are non-speaking, we automatically assumed at that time that their IQ was also very low.
Very low.
And
Yep.
that's not the case with my son. His IQ is difficult to measure because it's difficult to get output. But his
Yes.
input is just fine.
Yes.
Um,
We have a non-vocal, non-speaking learner at our adult center, and he's quite fluent in his AAC device, and he's quite intelligent.
yes.
And there are other factors that get in the way. of professionals being able to measure his real intelligence and what he would be able to do. And some of those are things that we need as practitioners to do a better job of. His OCD gets in the way a lot, right? And, the behavior skills, because he's OCD, transitioning when asked to do so, but when he does a task or he amazes me because of how smart he is, right? And people often do think just because there's always like a meme going around on the sites I follow, just because I can't speak doesn't mean I don't have a lot to say.
Yes.
Or I can't understand what's going on. And that's a terrible assumption that the world makes sometimes. And
Yes.
it limits our learners who can contribute to this world differently, even though they're not speaking.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my goodness. That I couldn't agree more. And I think that at least with my son, I don't know if this has been your experience, when someone doesn't really believe in them, they know it.
Oh, yeah, they know it. And they know, I'm thinking about the learner we have, they know who they want to work with, and you quickly know who they don't want to work with. when there's a schedule, or if we have to sub out therapists if somebody's sick or has taken the day off, we know right away what kind of who we can place with who, because it's a parent who respects the way they communicate, or not so much respects. All of my therapists respect it, understand.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest, disconnect. Understanding the way they communicate and what something means. And, some therapists, at least in my practice, if some of our learners, we know if they're about to do something else is going to happen, right? Like if one of our learners moves something, we know they're about to get up because they want to go to the kitchen. That's a bad example. But, some of our therapists know, okay, I need to prompt them to say, hey, can I go to the kitchen now? Right? Instead of, because most of the time, at least in my experience, they use their movement and their bodies to get what they want instead of their devices.
Yeah.
Because it's more efficient, right? And we're not always asking to get up to go to the bathroom. Like we just get up and go, right? But some of our therapists think danger is going to happen, or they're going to do something unsafe, which is why, we try to teach our learners who are non-vocal and non-speaking to use their device a lot, especially in a community setting, because when you're non-speaking and if you don't have those great listener skills to stop when somebody asks you to stop, it can lead to escalation and emotional dysregulation. So we try to teach using that device to get your requests met as often as possible, so people understand, like, you're cool, you're safe, you're not doing anything unpredictable. This is just where you're going.
Oh, I love that. What I'm hearing you say there is you're telling them the why.
Yep.
And something that I've learned over the years, from multiple people on the autism spectrum of different communication levels, is we have to know the why.
Yes.
It's a non-negotiable. Tell us why we're needing to learn something.
Why. Yes.
And that has made such a difference with my son. I know that recently he was not feeling great. He was dysregulated. And when he physically isn't feeling well, he's more emotionally dysregulated, as I'm sure you've seen that too.
Yeah.
And we had to stop for gas somewhere. And so we just make a habit of always telling him what's going to happen so he knows what to expect.
Yeah.
And told him I was going to stop for gas, and no. And so I pulled over, stopped the car for a moment, and I just very calmly said, do you want to go to wherever we were going? And he said yes. And I said, well, the problem is the car needs gas, and I won't be able to get there unless we put gas in the engine. And I said, are you afraid it's going to be hot? He said, yeah. I said, well, how about this? I will be 5 whole minutes, promise. And then I knew that I could pump that gas fast and get back in that car within 5 minutes. I didn't care if it was full or not. I was getting back in that car in 5 minutes.
You'd have enough to get there.
So he could see that I was reliable. And trust me, it's 100 degrees here in Florida right now. So I get it, dude. You don't want that car off even for a split second. But once he understood the why, he just kind of changed his demeanor and said, "Oh, okay." But that also comes with a lot of trust building over 27 years, where I didn't always follow through. I didn't always presume his competence. A lot of times I talked about him in front of him, thinking he didn't know the
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, like, so do you see all of that, the telling why and presuming their competence, how does that all fit in to the therapies that you're doing?
You know, I just think like telling why my therapist and my BCBAs and my RBTs, registered behavior therapists or behavior technicians, um, they know, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later, the adult program, but my sister-in-law had Down syndrome and lived with us every other weekend. And she was just, I mean, she had a room at my house with, my husband and myself. So she was always part of our family. And when I hire people, I let them know very clearly, like, I opened up this vision because of my sister-in-law who didn't have continuing behavior support and education past the age of 22. And we treat everybody like their family. And telling somebody the why behind something, that's just being a human. Like, we're not treating anybody any differently. So yeah, we tell the why because that's just the human thing to do behind everything we do.
Yeah.
And I would tell my sister-in-law a lot, like, she was very OCD and she liked ice cream at certain times and Diet Cokes and only went to the bathroom at certain times. So there were often times it was, listen, you need to have your Diet Coke now because I need to go pick up my son, David, and you're not going to have access to the Diet Coke. So it's either you take it now or you're just going to have to be late. So as long as you're kind of explaining, because I, I always felt, at least in my experience, being a part-time caregiver for an adult with a developmental disability, so much is out of their control in their life. And, there's always adults telling them what to do.
Yes.
And when they have to do things. And you're going to transition to the art table now because that's what's on the schedule, for the community workshop. And then, you're going to have lunch at this time. So a lot of her OCDs may have developed out of control. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm making this up. But also, who am I to say you can't have the Diet Coke at that time either, right? Like, just
Right.
explain the why behind things. And everybody likes to know the why behind things, whether you have a disability or not. So it's just the human thing to do.
I love that. I love that.
And oftentimes with my adults, and I mean, there's more conversations that take place in front of our learners that are teenagers than little kids, because usually the little kids are a little bit busier. They're like on the swings and, we have opportunities to have more private conversations. But if I'm having a conversation with a therapist that I'm supervising and there's a teenager in the room or adult in a room, I'm very clear. I'm going to be talking about you. I'm
Nice.
going to be talking about your behavior, and it probably will make you uncomfortable. So if you need a break, you can ask for it or join the conversation. Like, if there's something I don't know about and you're able to communicate what it is, please tell us. But this is the only opportunity I have to talk to John about your therapy. So these are your choices.
I think that's just so respectful. And
Yeah.
and it's not that people in the past have been disrespectful. I think that they didn't know what they didn't know. And
Yes.
when you think that kids or individuals with developmental disabilities are too, intellectually disabled to understand, then of course you're not going to bring them into the conversation.
Yes. Or think that they don't have any value to add because you don't think they understand it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's not the case all the time.
Yes. Yes. And I think more and more we're understanding that just because someone can't communicate like we can or can't hold down a full-time job, that there's somehow less of a, that they're suddenly a burden on society and they're not a contributor. And that hasn't been my experience at all. I mean, a lot of them have some really good ideas and a lot of feedback to give us.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. And it's different talents, right? They sometimes find joy in doing things that a quote neurotypical person wouldn't find as much joy in to
Yes.
doing, right? And I love that. Like that's great. Like my sister-in-law loved like stuffing Christmas envelopes, like when we would mail Christmas cards out, and she'd like putting the stamp on and labels. And I'm like, you can do that all day long because I just don't have time for it. But
Yes.
she found joy in doing that.
Yes.
And great. I got all the neighbors to be like, Karen will stuff your Christmas card. So it's just, and it gave her meaning.
Yes. Yes. They have, they have to feel as if they're part of what's going on. I noticed that my son, my husband, quite a few years ago, probably about 7 years ago now, um, quit his teaching job to be home full time with my son because we just couldn't find the right placement as a teenager. And they started going on outings together and they cooked together. And now, my son wants to cook all the time and cook
Yeah.
like legit food, like food that
Yeah.
he'll eat or that we'll eat. And he does it and he's careful. But it's taken some time. But I'm imagining that would be a good example of a skill that you could teach a little bit faster with
Yes.
ABA.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Usually much faster, like, because it's just
Yeah.
very, ABA is just the science of learning and teaching, not just, but that's part of it, right? So you can teach that very systematically and reinforce it very quickly, right? And most of the time, like my sister-in-law, by she was automatically reinforced by finishing and getting to the next envelope, right? So like it was just something that she enjoyed doing, and that's the best kind of teaching, right? When they're reinforced by the activity itself, when you don't have to, create reinforcement by, this is going back to like myths that, we give them a skittle every time they do something. That's a myth. We don't do that. I don't practice that way.
Right.
But that's just the example of, oh, you did this envelope, here's a skittle. No, she was reinforced because we found joy. She found joy in what she was doing.
Yes.
So, an ABA, the way I practice, that's how we try to practice in general. Let's teach through what they're just naturally reinforced by. Because if
Yeah.
you're teaching through natural reinforcement, they acquire the skill faster.
Yes.
And
It,
then you're
it,
able to tweak it a little bit more, right? Because it's not hard. So, and I always go back to, a lot of times I go back to school settings because I'm still called in sometimes to consult in schools. And my first question to teachers is when they're like, little Johnny is refusing to do work. He's throwing pencils. He's flipping the chair. Whatever the, the behavior problem is, it's, well, what's too hard for him?
yes.
There's something too hard that's occurring right now. Let's figure it out. What do the test scores look like? How much work are you giving him? How quickly is he supposed to respond? Because I have found, especially behaviors in schools, it's usually has something to do with it's too easy, it's too hard, or they're expecting a response in a certain amount of time. And
Mm.
it's okay to back off, go slow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't a
Mm-hmm.
race, just
Yeah.
back off a bit. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to something you mentioned before about your adult program.
Yeah.
I have yet to find an ABA therapy center that I like that has a program for people over 22. Like it's almost like, oh, they
Yeah.
get to be an adult and suddenly they can't learn anymore. Like that's kind of the message that I'm getting. Whereas my son's like ready now. Like as a kid, he wasn't ready. And now he's like ready to learn.
He's ready.
So he's
He's ready.
ready.
It's like right
Although
there.
I'm in Florida and you're in Chicago, Cindy.
I
So
know. I know. I better come down to Florida.
I mean, you
So
should. So tell me
what
about the adult program you have and what you guys provide.
Okay, so our adult program, I call it the Adult Learning Center. It's nothing, no fancy name, just the Adult Learning Center. I opened it up. My sister-in-law was the main motivation behind it because in 22 in the state of Illinois, generally you go to a workshop program or that's funded by the state, or a lot of families similar to you, like the power moms and dads, kind of create their own kind of like grassroots day programs. So options are limited to keep acquiring skills, just generally because if you go into a quote workshop program or even these day programs, which parents want to provide so many great activities for their adults, but there aren't one-on-ones, which sometimes our adults, especially the adults that we service in ABA, they still require more intense teaching of a skill. And the ratio in Illinois is generally like 8 adult clients to 1 adult staff member.
Wow.
And the clients that come to us are not able to function in a group because they're missing skills that would allow them to be independent in a group of 8. So they're missing skills such as waiting, accepting no, transitioning, completing an activity independently. Because, or they can't say, they don't have the communication skills to say, I want to do something different, or I don't like this, or I don't want to sit next to Sally.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's so many little things that sometimes our adults don't have those self-advocacy skills yet to say what they're not liking about their adult programming, that it quote gets them in trouble.
Yes.
And in trouble meaning they start using their maladaptive behavior, which means they can't return to the day program.
Right.
So they're asked to leave that program, and they can't be safe in a community setting because, if they go to Target, they don't know how to wait in a group. They just want to walk over to the pop aisle, to get their Diet Coke, and they're viewing it as elopement.
Right.
So we're working on a lot of parents, or when I talk to other day programs, because I talk to a lot of the local day programs, they're like, oh, they're missing soft skills. I'm like, those are not soft skills. those are safety necessary skills.
Yes.
So we really focus on, at our adult learning center, necessary, essential safety skills that will give them opportunities to access adult programming beyond an ABA center.
That's wonderful. And what age do you go up to? Is it just anybody over 22, or do you go up to a certain age?
So I actually started at age 15. This is my new criteria. They start transitioning to the adult center because my adult center is not designed pediatric at all. So you're not going to walk in and see, I don't know what's new in pediatrics, Bluey, I don't know, like Bluey, Mickey Mouse, like all of those, kind of trendy pediatric cartoon characters. It is strictly teenage and adolescent based. So we have a laundry room, a bedroom with, beds and a dresser where we're working on life skills. We have a rec room where there's just like a variety of games and different art activities and tables set up, and they're transitioning table to table, kind of like they would in a community center, and, where they have to work in a smaller group until we can build them up to a group of 8. We have a workout room where we're working on more intense exercise. We have a kitchen with a dishwasher. So some of our learners are doing like the food prep, and other of our learners are doing the cleanup, because we're a community and we're all going to participate and work together as a community. That's very important to me. But something else that our adult ABA center offers, because not every adult needs full-time ABA. So, a lot of centers, especially in like this area of the country, are like, you need to come to us 30 hours a week or you're not a client. You need to come here 40 hours a week. My pediatric center is not run that way, and neither is my adult center. Some adults only come to us 6 hours a week. Some adults do come to us 25 hours a week. It really depends on their need and what the parents value and what their goal is to get out of ABA. Because the minute you come into my ABA center, I'm thinking, how are you getting out? because you aren't supposed to be with me forever. And if you are with me forever, I have done a terrible, terrible job. So, my goal is, how are you getting out of here? And I think, especially in the ABA world, it's always been the next, when you're young, you get out when you go to school, get out of ABA. You graduate from ABA when you go to school. But for the adult world, what does graduation look like, right? So right now I'm measuring it just by, are they able to access a group of 6 to 1 adult and do so safely?
That's wonderful. I might need to move my family to Chicago. Just so
We'll take you. And can you do that safely? And something to, like, it's the funding and insurance is always a hard navigation. So we do offer other things to the community. I just started this past spring. I want to be more of a community resource center for families who have adults with disabilities. So once a month, we offer community programming that if you're not an ABA client, you can still come and kind of check us out and see what we're about. So we offer adaptive art classes. I have a personal trainer come in once a week and work with our adults and, just to get some exercise going. There's a local agency that we connect with that help families find the right funding through the state, help navigate guardianship. So I really try to be more of a resource center in addition to offering ABA, because parents, when a 4-year-old comes into my center, I tell parents this all the time. I know it's scary to think about transition, but your little boy will be a very grown adult longer than he is a little boy. So we need to start thinking about the skills we want to teach, so you don't have to worry about Johnny so much when he's 22. And we need to think about that now.
Yes.
Because it will pay off. Pay now or pay later. Like this will pay off.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Cindy, I know we could probably talk for a really long time.
But I
want to be mindful of your time. And for our Patreon listeners, we're going to have some bonus content with Cindy in our Patreon, on our Patreon page. So I'll have that linked in our show notes, as well as all of Cindy's information. But Cindy, the last question, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, that I ask all of my guests is, if every autism parent in the world were listening, what would you want them to know?
God, that's a tough question. I would want them to know, number one, your child is perfect the way they are, or adult. They're exactly who they're supposed to be in this world. And whatever you're experiencing now, it doesn't have to stay this way or be this way. There's hope, and find providers that will listen to you, find schools that will listen to you, and it's okay to have a challenge group of providers around you. You want people to challenge you. So if you are with therapists and teachers who always 100% agree with you, they may not be right either, right? So find providers that respect your opinion, that love your child more than anything. Every learner that comes into my facility, I talk to their families, I know what they value, and I love their kid like they're my own. And you can't put a price tag on that. So surround yourself with the right people who will make a difference in your child's life. And I think that's the number one piece of advice that I could give, not only parents with autism, but not autism too, right? Having the right adults guide your children makes a world of difference.
It really does. And on that note, Cindy, I want to thank you for coming on the Autism Blueprint podcast. And I'm sure we'll have you back on again.
I hope so.
Awesome. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Cindy Moratic, for being on the show today. This was a absolute treat for me and helped open my eyes to a lot of the misconceptions and prejudices that I think I've had around applied behavioral analysis. I feel like some of the takeaways that I'm taking from this, and that I hope you are too, is that we always need to assume that individuals with autism have the ability to learn and to communicate. It just might not be in the way that we think they should be, right? So we want to always presume competence. Families are the true experts on their children, and their insights are invaluable in shaping effective interventions. So I was so glad that that Cindy and I were on the same page about that. Also, the holistic approach that can be found with an ABA program. It's not just about addressing behaviors. It's about understanding the underlying skills that need to be taught. So thoughtful questioning can help uncover what truly matters to the families and their children. The other area that I was surprised by was emotional regulation. So learning isn't going to be able to occur when individuals are emotionally dysregulated. So it's essential to recognize when a child is ready and when they're not ready to learn, and to teach skills only during those moments of emotional stability. I think that's a lot of times where we, as the parents and as teachers and therapists, sometimes get it wrong, is that we're trying to teach a child while they're dysregulated in the middle of, the meltdown or in the middle of the tantrum. And that just isn't going to work. And effective communication is crucial for individuals with autism. A multidisciplinary approach that includes speech, occupational therapy, sensory integration, all of those things, in addition to ABA therapy, can really provide various ways for individuals to express themselves. And then adult services, right? It seems like when our kids become adults, everybody forgets about them and they just don't really have anything for them to do. And Cindy was saying that her center helps adults on the spectrum as well, which I have not seen before, which is, I'm just so heartened to see that. And then, some myth busting, right? ABA therapy is just very misunderstood. It's not about punishing bad behavior. It's not about making individuals appear normal, although that has been my experience with some ABA therapists in the past. So I want us to be able to hold both things here, right? There's the way some ABA therapy can be run, and then there's the way it's done when it's done with our children's mental health in mind. The goal is to enhance their quality of life and to teach skills, and all of those things will allow them to navigate the world a little more effectively. Well, thanks, friends, for joining us today. Remember that we have our Discord, Patreon community. Links will be in the show notes for that. Come on in. We're going to be having special things for our subscribers. So I hope to see you there.
The information in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional.